Iran has a choice: freeze the program and secure the deal. That was the message echoed across headlines, diplomatic briefings, and television panels. It sounded simple, clean, binary. Yet on the very same days those statements circulated, military assets continued shifting across the region, energy markets priced in risk premiums, and sanctions architecture remained largely intact. That is where I want to begin, because the public debate is obsessed with whether Iran will accept the deal. The real question is different. Who benefits from the clock itself? You are being invited to watch a negotiation. I think you should watch a timer instead. A timer changes behavior. It creates urgency. It narrows options. It forces decisions before information fully arrives. A 60-day deadline is not merely a diplomatic tool. It is a psychological weapon. Not necessarily against Iran alone, against investors, against allies, against domestic political audiences, against everyone sitting around the table. Most media coverage treats the proposed freeze as the story. I see the freeze as the stage prop. The story is the architecture surrounding it. Imagine a casino where the house announces a special game. Every player focuses on the cards. Almost nobody studies the rules determining when chips can enter or leave the table. Yet those rules decide who wins before the first card is dealt. Great powers operate similarly. Public attention follows speeches. Strategic attention follows constraints. I call this the corridor strategy. The corridor strategy is simple. A state creates a narrow corridor between two walls. On one side sits cooperation. On the other sits escalation. Then it compresses time. Once the corridor becomes narrow enough, the target begins choosing from options designed by someone else. Freedom appears intact. In practice, the menu has already been selected. Viewed through that lens, the 60-day framework looks less like a peace initiative and more like a test chamber. That does not automatically mean bad faith. States rarely operate through morality. They operate through incentives. Washington wants verification. Tehran wants sanctions relief. Regional allies want security guarantees. Energy markets want predictability. Domestic voters want victories. Every actor enters the room claiming principle while carrying a calculator. That is not cynicism. That is statecraft. Notice how the public conversation often focuses on uranium enrichment percentages. Those numbers matter, but they are frequently discussed in isolation. Imagine evaluating a corporation solely by one accounting line while ignoring cash flow, debt structure, and shareholder incentives. You would miss the entire picture. Nuclear negotiations function the same way. The enrichment debate is the visible iceberg tip. The invisible mass sits below water. Sanctions enforcement, oil exports, banking access, regional deterrence, military deployments, intelligence operations, and domestic political survival. Now follow the timeline carefully. When leaders announce diplomatic openings, many observers assume tensions are falling. Yet, history repeatedly shows a stranger pattern. Negotiations often occur precisely when both sides are preparing for the possibility of failure. Fire extinguishers appear where people expect fire, not where they expect calm. That creates the first contradiction. If everyone truly believes a deal is imminent, why maintain pressure mechanisms? Why preserve escalation options? Why continue signaling military readiness? Because sophisticated negotiators do not prepare for the agreement they want. They prepare for the agreement that collapses. You are watching two chess players smile while secretly reinforcing the table. Consider the domestic incentives facing Trump. A successful agreement can be sold as strength. A failed agreement can also be sold as strength if the framework was designed correctly. That asymmetry matters. In politics, the ideal position is one where both outcomes reinforce your narrative. If Iran accepts restrictions, you claim victory. If Iran rejects restrictions, you claim vindication. The structure itself becomes politically profitable. Now shift perspective and stand in Tehran. Iranian leaders face a different equation. Accept too much and they appear weak domestically. Reject everything and economic pressure persists. Delay excessively and external pressure increases. Yet a complete surrender is politically impossible. Every regime has red lines. Not because leaders are irrational, but because legitimacy is a resource. A government can lose territory and survive. A government can lose money and survive. A government that loses legitimacy enters dangerous territory. This is why many observers misunderstand Iranian behavior. They ask why Tehran refuses apparently attractive offers. The better question is whether those offers are compatible with domestic political survival. States do not negotiate from spreadsheets alone. They negotiate from internal constraints invisible to foreign audiences. That brings us to the second contradiction. Public messaging emphasizes compromise. Simultaneously, all parties continue speaking to domestic constituencies in language designed to signal toughness. This creates a theater of consent. Every leader must appear uncompromising while searching for compromise. The audience hears confrontation. The negotiators hear flexibility. Two conversations occur at once. One is for television. One is for history. Watch the energy dimension. Oil markets function like nervous systems. They react not only to events, but to probabilities. A single statement can move billions of dollars because traders are pricing futures, not present realities. Therefore, the 60-day clock is not merely diplomatic. It is financial. Every deadline changes expectations regarding sanctions, supply flows, stability, insurance costs, and regional stability. A rumor can travel faster than a tanker. That is why deadlines matter even before anything happens. The third contradiction emerges here. News coverage often treats diplomacy and military posture as opposites. In reality, they frequently move together. Increased leverage can support negotiation. Negotiation can justify increased leverage. What appears contradictory on the surface becomes complementary underneath. Think of a bow and arrow. The farther the bow is pulled back, the greater the pressure. Observers watching only the tension think conflict is inevitable. Sometimes the tension exists precisely to prevent release. This is where the phrase, freeze or lose the deal, deserves scrutiny. Such language creates the impression of a final crossroads. Yet international negotiations rarely operate through single moments. They operate through sequences. Deadlines expire, extensions emerge, technical consultations continue. Side channels remain active. Public failures often conceal private discussions. The world of diplomacy resembles a river more than a wall. It bends, it splits, it reconnects. The public tends to imagine decisive endings because stories require endings. Governments often prefer ambiguity because ambiguity preserves options. Now let me steelman the mainstream interpretation. The strongest argument supporting the conventional view is straightforward. Iran's nuclear activities generate genuine concern. Verification mechanisms matter. A time-limited framework can prevent endless delay. Pressure creates urgency. Urgency creates decisions. Therefore, a strict deadline may simply be an efficient diplomatic tool rather than a strategic trap. The argument is rational. It deserves respect. Many negotiations throughout history have required deadlines precisely because open-ended discussions achieved nothing. Without pressure, talks drift. Without consequences, commitments weaken. The mainstream case is not absurd. It is logically coherent. But there is something it struggles to explain. If the objective is purely technical verification, why does every announcement generate such extensive political choreography? Why do economic signals, military signals, alliance signals, and media narratives move simultaneously? Why does the conversation constantly expand beyond centrifuges and inspections? Because the negotiation is carrying more weight than the official subject. It is becoming a proxy measure of regional order itself. That distinction matters enormously. The nuclear file may be the vehicle. The destination is broader. influence, security architecture, energy access, strategic credibility, alliance management, future deterrence. Each participant is bargaining over multiple layers simultaneously. Picture a cargo ship. From shore, you see containers stacked neatly. Below deck, entirely different cargo is moving. The visible negotiation concerns nuclear restrictions. The invisible negotiation concerns the future balance of power. That is why seemingly minor statements receive outsized attention. A sentence from Washington, a response from Tehran, a comment from a regional ally. Markets react because participants understand they are receiving clues about a larger equation. Every signal becomes data. Every delay becomes data. Every denial becomes data. When people hear the word trap, they often imagine deception. I am describing something subtler. Strategic traps frequently emerge without hidden conspiracies. They arise from incentive structures. Once a deadline exists, every participant must respond to it. The clock begins shaping behavior regardless of original intent. The trap may not be a secret plan. The trap may be the framework itself. That framework places Tehran under pressure, but it also pressures Washington. A public deadline creates expectations. Failure becomes visible. Allies begin calculating contingencies. Opponents search for weaknesses. Financial markets reassess risk. Deadlines are boomerangs. You throw them outward. They eventually return. Now examine the regional audience. Countries surrounding Iran are not passive spectators. They interpret every negotiation through their own security concerns. Some fear escalation. Others fear a weak agreement. Others fear being excluded from the emerging order. Therefore, every diplomatic move generates secondary reactions. The negotiation table has more chairs than cameras reveal. That hidden audience influences outcomes. Leaders must reassure allies while bargaining with rivals. They must project confidence while managing uncertainty. They must reduce risk without appearing fearful. These are conflicting objectives. Yet modern geopolitics demands all of them simultaneously. This is why simplistic narratives fail. The world is not divided into peacemakers and warmongers, nor is it divided into heroes and villains. It is divided into actors attempting to maximize security under conditions of incomplete information. Some do it better than others. None do it perfectly. If you focus exclusively on official statements, you will miss the structure. If you focus exclusively on military movements, you will also miss the structure. The real signal emerges where narratives, incentives, and timelines intersect. That intersection is where power hides, and power prefers hiding. The next 72 hours, or any similar short window surrounding critical diplomatic phases, should be viewed through three specific indicators. First, watch sanctions language rather than ceremonial language. Speeches generate headlines. Enforcement mechanisms generate reality. Any shift in sanctions implementation often reveals more than public optimism or pessimism. Second, watch regional military posture for changes in readiness rather than dramatic deployments. The important signal is not always movement. Sometimes it is preparedness. Small adjustments frequently communicate more than large announcements. Third, watch energy markets and shipping risk assessments. Financial actors place real capital behind expectations. They cannot afford the luxury of ideological storytelling. Their behavior often exposes what they truly believe about probability. These indicators matter because they measure incentives, not intentions. Intentions are invisible. Incentives leave footprints. As the countdown continues, many viewers will ask whether Iran accepts the deal. Others will ask whether Trump outmaneuvered Tehran. Those questions are understandable. They are also incomplete. I want you to ask something deeper. When governments create clocks, deadlines, crises, and breakthroughs, are they primarily trying to change reality, or are they trying to change the range of realities that everyone else believes are possible? Because once you control that range, You no longer need to control every decision. People begin making the decisions you want on their own. And if that is true, then perhaps the most important battlefield in modern geopolitics is not a desert, a sea lane, or a nuclear facility. Perhaps it is the space between certainty and uncertainty. The space where a 60-day timer starts ticking. And the moment you hear it, you are already part of the game.